7 spine-chilling sleepover tales, unexplainable terror revealed in these haunted nights. The clock struck midnight, and the laughter around the flickering candlelight faded into thick silence. 7 friends huddled in the corner of Jenna's pink, 2-story house in Millstone, Kansas, the familiar glow of childhood friendship now overshadowed by an unshakable unease. Ghost stories had filled the night, each one scarier than the last, but nothing could prepare them for what lay ahead. The atmosphere crackled with tension when muted whispers drifted from the basement, striking like a lightning bolt through their carefree chatter. Nervous glances were exchanged, eyes wide with disbelief. No one wanted to be the first to investigate. The darkness of the basement loomed heavy, almost tangible. They could feel its presence seep into the room, thick and suffocating. As shadows danced against the window panes, Jenna's voice trembled as she spoke. What if it's the Whistler? The story lingered in the air, the haunting figure who called out to children, luring them into the night where they'd vanish without a trace. Just the thought made their hearts race more fiercely than the sugary snacks coursing through their veins. Suddenly, Jenna's phone buzzed violently, jarring them from their ghostly visions. Her older brother Tyler was missing. He was supposed to be with friends. Jenna's voice faltered. Anxiety bloomed like a dark flower as doubt seeped into their camaraderie. What if the whispers weren't mere figments of their imagination? The door rattled with a sudden knock, an unwelcome intrusion that sent shivers down their spines. But when they opened the door, they were met with empty darkness, the night swallowing any remnants of warmth and security. Fear churned in the pit of their stomachs. It felt as if the stories were coming to life, wrapping around them like a venomous vine. Jenna remembered Mr. Calhoun, the neighbor who always had knowing eyes. He'd shared heroic tales of safety but never spoke of the shadows lurking in Millstone's past. Images flooded back dark corners, hushed-toned secrets that threatened to resurface. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Tension snapped like a rubber band. They formulated a plan to face their fears, stepping back toward the basement, the epicenter of their fright. But another chilling sound sliced through their chatter. A whistle carried on the breeze, an eerie echo of what just hours before had felt like playful banter. The chill crept down their spines, cold fingers gripping their hearts. As they clutched one another, Jenna peered through the window, and her blood turned to ice. There, lurking just beyond the yard, was a tall figure, shadowy and indistinct, beckoning them to approach. Their breaths quickened, and frozen in that moment of dread, they faced a chilling realization. They were not just the protagonists in a teenager's ghost story, they were walking directly into something terrifyingly real. With the air thick with fear, the weight of their decision pressed on them heavier than the night itself. Would they flee back to where childhood fears were just stories? Or would they summon courage and venture forth into the darkness that awaited, teeth bared and secrets unleashed? Jenna's heart pounded in her chest, drowning out the whispers that seemed to call her name. The figure outside stood still, shrouded in a cloak of shadows, waiting like a predator. It was almost as though they were being dared to step outside, to confront whatever haunted the edges of their childhood laughter. Guys, we can't just ignore this, Jenna whispered, her voice barely an echo of its usual strength. Tyler, he's out there. What if Megan, Jenna's closest friend, shook her head, her face as pale as the moonlight spilling through the window. What if it really is the Whistler? He could be luring us out. We need to stay here. We can't trust anything tonight. But the fear of losing Tyler hung in the air like a fog, thick and suffocating. They could almost feel it, the weight of their indecision pressing down on them. The whispers continued, a soft haunting tune that struck a chord within each of them. They were too familiar, too real. Tyler needed them. Jenna glanced at the others. Austin, Sarah, Kyle, fear etched into their features. Let us grab flashlights and check the yard. We can't leave him out there if he's in trouble. Jenna said, her voice gaining strength as she spoke. With hesitant nods, they gathered the flashlights. The beam of light cut through the darkness like a knife, and as they stepped outside, the cool air bit at their skin, a sharp reminder of the danger. Each crunch of fallen leaves beneath their shoes felt like thunder, amplifying their pulse. In the distance, the figure stood just beyond the tree line. Blacker than the night, it seemed to absorb the very light around it. The outline was unnaturally tall, unnerving. Jenna felt bow rise in her throat. This was no child's tale. Whatever this was, it felt ancient and malevolent. Stay close, she commanded, scooting forward, the others forming a tight circle behind her, their flashlights flickering against the darkness. Fear coiled around each of them. Then, from the shadows, a sound emerged. The whistle. High-pitched, ethereal, it wound through the air like fingers brushing their skin. Panic flashed in the other's eyes. What if it's drawing us in? Kyle whispered, trembling. Maybe we should go back inside. But that wouldn't search for Tyler. It wouldn't solve their dilemma. Jenna's pulse quickened. We have to call for him. Tyler! Tyler! They echoed, voices shaking with fear. The whistle crescendoed, and for a brief moment, an unnatural calm washed over them. They stood frozen, caught between their childhood fears and the very real threat that loomed before them. Let us go back. Please! Sarah's voice quivered as the figure took a step forward, and the streetlight flickered ominously. Shadows stretched and distorted. The darkness seemed to breathe. Wait, Jenna breathed, standing firm. It doesn't look like it's moving. Soon enough, they realized that what they thought was a mere human form transformed, limbs extending as it unfurled from the darkness, revealing an uncanny shape, fluid and monstrous. A scream pierced the night, not from one of them, but from somewhere inside the house. Jenna! Austin started, but it was too late. They were instinctively drawn to the sound. The door swung wide open, and a gust of wind pushed them inside, slamming it shut behind them. The warmth of the dimly lit living room settled just as the figure outside flickered and vanished into thin air. Did you see that? Jenna gasped. The others nodded, terrified and confused, but in the quiet that followed, an even more haunting whisper settled, a voice from the darkness calling them back to the basement. What secrets are buried down there? Do we dare to find out? Jenna's skin prickled as the last words hung in the air. The basement had always been a place of shadows and lost toys, yet now it loomed as a harbinger of dread. We can't, she whispered, eyes darting between her friends. We can't go down there. But what if Tyler's down there? Austin urged, his voice trembling. We can't just leave him. Maybe he ran back inside, Megan suggested, but the uncertainty in her eyes betrayed her confidence. They all knew Tyler wouldn't abandon them. Let us check, Kyle said, stepping toward the basement door. The sound of creaking wood echoed ominously, like the house itself was warning them. The flickering light overhead cast eerie shadows that twisted and curled along the walls. Wait! Jenna reached out, her heart pounding. The fear clawing at her throat threatened to suffocate. What if we're walking into a trap? A silence followed, heavy with unsaid fears. Then came another whisper, curling into their ears like smoke. Help me, did you hear that? Sarah gasped, eyes wide. The voice slithered into their minds, warm yet chilling. Was it Tyler? Or was it something else entirely? Without thinking twice, Jenna pushed forward, throwing open the basement door. Cold air flooded the room as the stale, musty scent of ages past crept up to greet them. She shined her flashlight down the staircase, revealing the steps leading into darkness. Tyler! She shouted, voice firm despite the dread rumbling in her gut. Are you down there? The only response was an echo of her voice swallowed by the abyss. The darkness beneath felt alive, writhing and hungry. Let us go, Kyle urged, stepping down the first stair, his flashlight beam bobbing unsteadily. Jenna felt her heart race, the emptiness of the basement beckoning like a siren. They followed closely, one by one, the air growing colder with each step. Austin's flashlight flickered ominously, casting frantic shadows that dashed across the walls. Guys, I don't like this, Megan whispered, her voice small against the enveloping dark. Sure, Jenna hissed, straining to listen. A soft rustling came from deep within the shadows, like fabric brushing against skin, or perhaps the slither of something far worse. Tyler? She called out again, her voice wavering. The air pulled tight. Then, just as suddenly, a loud thud resounded from the bottom of the staircase. It felt like the beat of a dying heart. The group froze, breath hitching, fear cementing them in place. What was that? Kyle murmured, his eyes darting around wildly. The flashlight flickered even more violently now, as if it, too, sensed the danger lurking just beyond view. Maybe it was just the house settling? Jenna suggested, desperate for any shred of logic to ease the terror. Yet deep down, she felt certainty beginning to fray. Suddenly, the whispers crescendoed again, enveloping them in chilling harmony. "Help me please," the voice was closer, raw with desperation. It sent a shock of ice through Jenna's veins. "No! We have to leave!" Megan shrieked, already retreating. But the doorway behind them suddenly slammed shut. Darkness thickened, wrapping around them like suffocating hands. Jenna felt the walls closing in, her breath hitching in her throat. "Is this a joke?" Kyle yelled, panic igniting in his chest. And then, in the next breath, the flashlight went out. Plunged into complete blackness, they could hear their own heartbeats pounding in fear, each pulse echoing the terror that shrouded them. Jenna Austen's voice trembled, sounding so small. "What do we do now?" Gritting her teeth against the escalating panic, Jenna struggled to remain calm. "Stay close, we need to find another way out." But a slithering sound came from the shadows, like something crawling. It wasn't Tyler. The whisper turned to a scream, and for the first time, they recognized the voice that echoed around them. "What have you brought to me?" it hissed, and just like that, the basement revealed its true horror: what waits in the darkness, and who will survive the night. The silence stretched on, thick as dread. Jenna's mind raced, a whirlwind of fear and confusion. The darkness felt alive and hungry. She could feel the weight of her friend's eyes on her, filled with paralyzing terror. "Jenna, what do you see?" Kyle whispered, his voice frail against the dark. "Nothing." She paused, breathing shallowly. "Just I can't see anything." A sound like nails scraping against wood pierced through the darkness. It was followed by a chorus of whispers, the eerie symphony clawing at Jenna's sanity. "Help me," it was Tyler's voice, but distorted, blending with something darker, more sinister. "Tyler, where are you?" Jenna called out again, voice quaking. She felt the trembling hands of her friends clutching her shoulders, desperate for reassurance. "Did you hear that?" Austen's voice cracked. It sounds like he's right here." Before Jenna could respond, a cold wind blew through the room, wrapping around her like a frozen embrace. Each breath felt suffocating, every heartbeat reverberating with panic. She stumbled back, her foot catching something soft and yielding. "Watch out!" Jenna screamed, as she realized it was a figure huddled in the shadows. In horror, she strained to see through the gloom. The air thickened, twisting with palpable fear and decay. "Is it him?" Sarah cried, squinting into the void. The figure shifted, revealing a face twisted in agony, skin pale and drawn. It looked like Tyler, but the expression was wholly unnatural, a macabre mimicry that made Jenna's stomach turn. "Help me," the thing pleaded, voice twisted with something sinister. "That's not Tyler!" Kyle shouted, backing away, but the figure lunged forward, reaching out with skeletal hands. It moved with an unsettling speed, a blur in the darkness. "Run!" Jenna yelled, adrenaline surging. They turned, scrambling toward the slamming door, but the shadows coiled around them, thickening like a suffocating fog. "Where's the light?" Megan wailed, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Stay together," Jenna commanded, struggling to keep her voice steady. But the room felt larger, more labyrinthine, stretching into infinity as they ran, disoriented. The walls whispered their fears back at them, mocking and relentless. The figure remained just out of sight, a lurking predator that prowled the edges of the shadows. Suddenly, they rounded a corner where the darkness felt less oppressive. There! Jenna gasped, spotting a faint glow emanating from a far corner at the end of the basement. As they dashed toward it, the whispers grew frantic, crescendoing into a horrifying wail. "You're mine, you've brought me what I crave!" Jenna glanced over her shoulder, heart racing, seeing the figure emerging behind them, its face a ghastly mask of delight and hunger. "Faster!" she screamed, feeling terror lurch in her chest. They reached the source of light, an old lantern flickering weakly, and the shadows recoiled at its touch. The writhing mass of darkness stopped just short, writhing in confusion. "We need to light it!" Austin shouted, hands trembling as he fumbled with the matchsticks in his pocket. "No time!" Jenna gasped, half turning to face the encroaching darkness. They had to do something. The whispers hadn't stopped, they grew louder, almost deafening. "You can't escape. The darkness is your fate." Austin struck a match, the tiny flame illuminating their faces in stark contrast. Jenna felt hope surge, but it flickered, as weak as the flame. Crouching, they watched as the darkness pulsed forward, drawn to the light but still monstrous. The lantern flickered ominously as the shadows lunged once more, ready to claim their souls. "Do it!" Jenna urged, and in that moment, they all leaned in. But would the light be enough to hold back the relentless darkness, or would it only draw them closer to what waited beyond the veil of despair? Are we brave enough to face it, or is it already too late? The flame danced precariously, casting ghostly shadows on the basement walls. Jenna's heart raced as Austin held the match, the flicker revealing the twisted, eager face of what had once been their friend. "Light it!" Kyle screamed, panic gripping his throat. Jenna felt her own heartbeat thundering as the figure edged closer, drawn to the warmth like a moth to a flame. "Come on, come on!" Austin shouted, hands shaking, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple. The match sizzled against the lantern wick, and Jenna could almost feel the darkness breathing, waiting for the moment it could snuff out the last glimmer of hope. Just as the lantern began to catch, the wicked whispers surged back, penetrating like ice through their veins. "You think light will save you? You think you can escape? You are mine!" Jenna shoved her friends backward, urgency propelling her thoughts. "We have to move! Get that lantern lit!" The match flared. For a terrible moment, the darkness recoiled, the whispers fading to an anxious murmur. Hope surged within her briefly, but the glowing hope was quenched by an unseen force that pushed against them, a malevolent will that sought to draw them back into the abyss. The lantern sputtered, the flame wavered. Time stretched unbearably as Austin twisted and turned, desperately hoarding the delicate match against failure. "Got it!" he finally bellowed as the wick ignited. An ethereal light exploded from the lantern, illuminating the basement in stark contrast to the creeping shadows. But the relief was short-lived. With a guttural roar, the figure lunged, its hands clawing through the light as if attempting to tear it apart. "You can't fight me!" it howled, its face contorting in rage. "Back! Back!" Jenna yelled, heart hammering. They pressed backward as the shadows writhed, but the light held its ground, flickering defiantly. Yet Jenna could feel the growing weight of despair pressing against her chest. "What do we do now?" Megan whispered, eyes wide with terror. The glow from the lantern started to dim, casting elongated shadows that danced and taunted them. "Don't let the darkness take the light!" Jenna shouted, finding strength in the fear that flooded her. "If we can hold the light steady, we might be able to push it back." Their eyes blazed with determination, hearts pounding as they edged around the lantern, forming a protective circle. "Together!" Kyle insisted, gripping the sides of the lantern, sweat pooling in the palms of his hands. The air shivered, thickening with dread. They chanted silently, a prayer for courage, for survival. But as one unified force, their breaths steadied, and they pushed forward, the light shining brighter. For a fleeting second, the ruptured whispers fell silent. "Run, the other exit!" Jenna shouted, her voice slicing through the lingering shadows. They turned to sprint away, but the darkness twisted, a swirling mass hell-bent on dragging them back. Jenna felt fingers cold and relentless slip through her grasp, pulling at her like chains. "Don't let go!" Austin yelled, desperately trying to hold on to Jenna's arm. But they were losing grip on one another. In a single horror-fueled moment, the lantern flickered violently, and the air screamed in agony. "This is your end," the figure howled, the depth of its voice reverberating through the darkness. As the whispering shadows surged, Jenna looked down into the glowing light, desperate to know if it would fend off the encroaching waves of despair. Then the lantern flicked out completely, plunging them into a suffocating blackness. "No!" they screamed in unison, horror closing in. And in that profound silence, high-pitched laughter erupted, the figure's laughter echoing in twisted mockery. "Now you're mine," Jenna's breath hitched. How could they possibly escape this? Where was the light? But what if the light wasn't meant for their escape? What if it was meant to bring something worse? Are we ready to face our darkest fears, or will we simply become another story in the dark? The silence that swallowed them felt thicker than the darkness, like a shroud. Jenna strained her ears, but the echoes of laughter only amplified the terror, ringing off the walls in warped tones. She could hear Kyle's ragged breathing beside her, each gasp a drumbeat of panic. "Where are you?" Jenna whispered, her voice trembling. "Right here," Kyle replied, his voice softer, drenching the air with uncertainty. Megan clutched onto Jenna's arm, nails digging into her skin, as if the pain was a lifeline. "What do we do?" she whispered, sounding small and lost. "I don't know," Jenna admitted. The truth was, fear had a vice grip on her. The memories of the basement, the lantern, the figure they'd barely felt real now, warped into something dreamlike and horrifying. Then came a new sound, sharp and mocking, a low thud followed by the sound of something scraping across the concrete floor. It came from the direction they had just been pulled from the place where the lantern had exploded into darkness. In that moment, the intuitions of survival kicked in. "We need to move now," she urged, pushing against the relentless weight pressing upon them. With Megan and Kyle in tow, Jenna shuffled forward, every step sounding like a betrayal against the eerie stillness. They crept against the walls, disoriented from both the dark and the laughter that haunted their thoughts, and all fear coiled tight in their throats. "Do you think we can find the other exit?" Austin asked, barely above a whisper. His voice shook, and the tremor drove daggers of dread into Jenna's heart. "We have to try," she murmured, forcing herself to believe. She could feel the flicker of hope igniting again. Suddenly, the throaty laughter erupted once more, ricocheting off the stone walls, each burst a jagged knife cutting through their resolve. "Faster!" Jenna hissed, the urgency now boiling over. Shadows danced along the corners, playing tricks on her mind, trying to pull her focus away from the path ahead. A second thud rang out, echoing nearer this time. Something was moving, creeping closer, stalking them through the blackness. Jenna could almost feel its breath. Then, she spotted a faint glimmer ahead, blinking like a star lost in the abyss. "There! I see something!" she shouted, pointlessly beyond the suffocating dark, as she took a step towards it. As they got closer, the flicker revealed itself. A strange, pulsing light emanated from what appeared to be a circle scratched into the concrete floor. Shapes twisted and turned within it, fractures of the same darkness they had thought they had escaped. "What in the world?" Kyle gasped, the color draining from his face. The air around them turned thick and clammy, and instinctively Jenna knew this was wrong, that this was more than a way out. "No, we can't go there!" she exclaimed, feeling the chill of dread coiling tightly around her. But before she could finish, the earth shook violently beneath them, and the pulsing light intensified, drawing them toward it with an almost magnetic force. "What is happening?" Megan cried, her voice shrill against the chaos. Before Jenna could answer, the shadow figure loomed behind them, its form shadowy and ethereal. The eyes glowed with malevolence, boring into Jenna's soul. "You think you can escape? You belong to me now." They halted, frozen in fear, knowing this threat was unlike anything they had faced before. A terrible realization seeped into Jenna's mind. Perhaps this was the true test. Time stood still as the figure extended a hand, a gesture that felt more like a curse than an offer. Inside, a rumble grew. The darkness was not done with them yet. "Turn back! We're not finished!" Jenna shouted, battling fear with defiance. But the reality was slipping away, unraveling like a fraying rope. With no way out, she was left to wonder what fate awaited them. Do we face it together, or do we let the shadows take what is ours? As the sinister eyes fixed on her, Jenna steeled herself. The decision loomed like an unholy ghost. The question hung in the air, heavy with dread, waiting for the next terrible thing to unfold. Would they be ready to confront the darkness, or would they simply fade away, forgotten in the shadows? The tremors beneath them intensified, the ground shaking like a living thing, and Jenna felt as if the very earth was trying to swallow them whole. Panic surged like a rushing tide, threatening to drown her. Kyle grabbed her wrist, and she could feel the cold sweat seeping through his skin. "What do we do?" he shouted, his voice laced with desperation. "Stick together!" Jenna cried, every fiber of her being shouting for them to flee. But that pulsing light felt like a siren's song, drawing them towards it, offering a deceptive sense of safety. The shadow creature lingered just behind, its presence an inescapable nightmare. Megan whimpered, digging her nails further into Jenna's arm. "Please! I don't want to die here!" As the darkness pressed in, Jenna's heart raced. She needed a plan. With a lurch, she pushed forward, willing the others to follow. "We have to take our chances. If we can reach the light, maybe we can break whatever hold it has on us." Together, they shuffled towards the glowing circle, each step heavy and reluctant. But the closer they got, the more insidious the laughter grew, filling the air with manic amusement. It twisted around them, echoing their fears and despair. "Faster!" Jenna urged, the urgency spilling over in her voice. But the further they moved, it felt like they were stepping in quicksand, each stride taking more effort than the last. The walls appeared to close in, suffocating them. "Jenna!" Kyle cried, his voice barely audible over the cacophony. "It's too strong!" Then, in a burst of raw energy, Jenna surged ahead, overwhelmed by the sheer will to survive. She grabbed the edge of the circle, its energy crackling against her fingertips. The raw pulse was mesmerizing, casting flickering shadows against their faces. But it was also a warning and unspoken connection to something darker. "Don't let go!" she shouted back at her friends, glancing over her shoulder. The figure stood poised, waiting to strike, the promise of despair lurking in its hollow gaze. Suddenly, a guttural roar filled the space, sending vibrations rippling through Jenna's bones. She felt the wind rush past her, almost alive, as something invisible clawed at her very soul. The laughter twisted into howls of rage and mockery, piercing through the thick darkness. "Make a choice," the figure declared, its voice echoing off the walls, deeper and darker than any of their fears. "Join me, or be consumed." Jenna felt the weight of the world pressing down on her. She glanced at Megan and Kyle, desperation flooding her senses. She could see the doubt etching lines into their faces, the fear threading through their minds. What would they do? In an act of sheer defiance, Jenna shouted, "We choose to fight!" The moment hung suspended before her. The energy of the circle surged, engulfing them in a blinding light. The world blurred and twisted, and for a moment, Jenna was weightless, unanchored by reality. But then, in an instant, the light began to fade, and the darkness clutched at her throat like a vice. She could hear the figure laughing, its malevolent glee echoing as shadows crept closer, crawling along the walls. "What are you doing, Jenna?" Kyle's voice trembled, just a whisper now, lost against the maddening laughter. "Keep holding on. Don't let go," she replied, though the words felt hollow, void of conviction. Just as hope glimmered like a candle on the edge of a storm, an overwhelming presence surged from the darkness, and then came a piercing shriek, one that sent chills down Jenna's spine. It ripped through the air, clawing at the edges of her sanity. Silence fell momentarily, the laughter stilled. What came next unwound the very fabric of their existence. A shadow loomed over them, thicker than the darkest scream of rage that punctured the silence, demanding their surrender. In that moment of stillness, a question intruded like a knife. In the end, what are you willing to sacrifice to survive? As the shadows surged again, tenacious and hungry, Jenna felt the ground beneath her shift unexpectedly. Something was coming, crashing through the veil. What awaited them when the light disappeared? The circle pulsed, and she could only gasp at the possibilities, both terrifying and unknown, as a new terror beckoned from the depths. Would they be consumed, or could they fight back against the encroaching shadow? Only time would tell, and she could feel it slipping away like sand through her fingers. The shadows recoiled, swirling like a tempest, and Jenna felt a chill race up her spine. An icy grip wrapped around her heart as she stared into the abyss that hung at the edge of the pulsing circle. The creature's laughter resumed, louder, more frenzied, mocking her fragile determination. It was a sound so sinister it seemed to slice through the very air, filling her with dread. "Jenna!" Megan shouted, her voice shaky. "What is happening?" "I don't know," Jenna yelled back, clenching her teeth in frustration. She could feel her hands trembling as they gripped the edge of the light, the warm energy contrasting with the cold horror creeping up from behind. Kyle tugged eagerly at her sleeve. "It feels like the ground is a sickening lurch," sent Jenna stumbling, dragging her friends with her as the floor dropped away. They flew into the blinding light just as tendrils of shadows shot forward, grasping for them. The moment felt surreal, as if time had split in two. Then they landed hard, the soft ground cushioning their fall. What should have been grass felt more like an ancient, decaying carpet. The light swallowed them for an instant, then released, leaving them in a peculiar twilight landscape. The air was thick, heavy with a damp scent that reminded Jenna of iron and old stories of betrayal. She struggled to her feet, shaking off the lingering sensation of the depths beneath them. "Are we safe?" Kyle's voice quivered as he scanned their surroundings. Megan shivered next to Jenna, her eyes darting nervously. "Where are we?" Ahead, the glowing circle pulsed faintly against the encroaching darkness, a beacon of hope in an increasingly chaotic world. Jenna's senses screamed that the worst was not over, that they had not escaped. This was merely a different level of the nightmare. "Stay close," Jenna whispered, her lips pressing into a thin line. "We need to find our way back." But something caught her eye, a flicker of movement in the darkness surrounding them. Shapes twisted around the edges of her vision, darting between malleable shadows. Jenna's heart raced as she began to see fleeting, tortured faces etched in pain, sobs and whispering voices echoing softly through the thick fog that rolled toward them. "What are those?" Kyle's voice cracked, his face pale as he pointed to the darker strands that shimmered in the dim light. "They look lost," Jenna whispered, straining her ears to listen. The voices called out. They pleaded, beckoning her closer. "Help us!" One echoed through the obscurity, its tone laced with desperation. "You don't know what it's like to feel forgotten. Don't listen to them." Jenna turned sharply to Kyle and Megan, panic dripping from her voice. "They're traps, we can't trust anything here." But something shifted in the air, blending relentless sorrow with the delight of the shadows. The faces twisted into vengeful grins, their eyes lit with malevolence. "You can save us, Jenna, or perhaps join us." With each word, darkness crept closer, the fog thickening and curling around their feet like a serpent ready to strike. The laughter from before, those mocking, cruel laughter, swirled once more, becoming a maddening cacophony that thudded against their mind. Jenna squeezed her eyes shut to block out the nightmarish scene that surrounded them. "We need to get to the other side of the circle. Now!" But a hand shot out from the shadows, unexpectedly firm, gripping her wrist with a shocking coldness that clawed at her skin. "Join us," it whispered, and the promise felt like silk and blades. It snatched at her resolve, pulling her toward the darkness, its breath warm yet ancient like decay. Jenna strained to pull back, fighting against whatever held her captive. She felt Kyle and Megan grasping her, fighting their own battles, yelling, but the words were lost within the storm of voices pleading. "Make your choice," Jenna, came the echo, deep and sinister, from the shadows that loomed all around. Panic surged within her as she was torn between the light and the encroaching dark, between her friends and the promise of something more. The silence burned, and Jenna realized something terrifying. What if they never truly escaped? What if they were meant to join this darkness forever? And just like that, shadows began to claim them, one step at a time. To survive, She would have to make the hardest choice of all. Would they be opponents or pawns in this ruthless game? Could the sacrifice they were each willing to make lead to their salvation? Or would she be the first to pay the price? The darkness only laughed, drowning out her thoughts as the ground quaked beneath them once again. The grip around Jenna's wrist tightened, a coldness that slipped through her bones and into her very soul. She gasped, pulling fiercely, but the shadows held her with a strength that left her breathless. "Let go! Let go!" she screamed, but the darkness hissed back, weaving through her words like smoke. "Join us, Jenna! You'll never feel alone again," it beckoned, the voices swirling, growing louder and more insistent. They swarmed around her, wrapping tightly around her mind like chains. Each anguished face whispered promises of companionship and safety, but Jenna knew better than to listen. Megan cried out, her eyes wide with terror. "Jenna, please!" She rushed forward, grabbing Jenna's other arm. "Fight! We can't give in!" But the shadows snarled, baring twisted teeth, their hunger insatiable. Jenna felt a surge of fear. Her heartbeat drummed in her ears, drowning out the thundering sounds of chaos surrounding them. She squeezed her eyes shut, focusing on the warmth of Megan's hand, anchoring her to reality. "My choice is not yours to make," Jenna roared, determination coursing through her. Pushing against the darkness, she felt a sudden jolt of light burst from the heart of her being. The glow pushed outward, illuminating her friends' faces just as the shadows recoiled, hissing like creatures caught in daylight. In that moment, a blinding flash swept through the air, forcing the shadows backward. Kyle shouted, "Keep going!" He pulled at Jenna, and together, with Megan beside them, they churned toward the soft glow of the pulsing circle, hearts racing like frantic drums. The ground trembled as if it too despised the encroaching darkness. Jenna felt something shift beneath her feet, an unsettling sensation as if the earth writhed alive, ready to suck them back into the abyss. "Don't stop," she urged. They stumbled, feet falling in a wild rhythm as shadowed hands swiped at them, mere inches away. One claw grazed Kyle's arm, leaving a crimson streak. His pained yelp echoed, driving them forward. Suddenly, the air turned frigid, and Jenna's breath clouded in front of her like the despair in her heart. "We've got to," she began, but then everything abruptly changed. The ground beneath them caved in, and they plummeted once again, a sliding, twisting drop into a deeper darkness, the light above slipping from view. With a thud, they landed on cold stone. The shadows encircled them once more, their presence suffocating like smothering husks. This time, Jenna could see the entity that loomed, a vast, dark figure coalescing in the gloom, its eyes watching them with a dreadful hunger. "Welcome, lost souls," it intoned, the sound echoing. "You have come to seek what was taken from you. All of your desires can be yours." Jenna's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage as she felt the weight of its gaze. In that moment, she understood. Each of them was a vessel of pain, longing, and regret. But they were also stronger than this darkness, if only they could hold on to that truth. "No!" she shouted. "We refuse your bargains." The shadows screeched in fury, the air thick with the smell of decay. Jenna tightened her fists. "We will fight. Together." The circle's glow flickered nearby, a beacon against the darkness. But another wave of shadows slammed against them, and Jenna felt herself pulled apart, each remnant of hope eroded by despair. The temperature dropped, suffocating her resolve. "What if we fail?" Kyle whispered, his face a blend of fear and desperation. Jenna felt her breath catch. What if failure meant a fate worse than death? What if the world of light was forever lost to them? "We have to try," she shouted, but the shadows closed in. As they staggered, something deep within Jenna ignited. "The shadows can hold us if we believe in each other." With a burst of resolve, her words sliced through their despair, sparking something undeniable. And then, the darkness twisted, reshaping itself into a thing of torment. An insatiable beast urged them to relent. But out there, somewhere in that piercing light, was hope. What price would they pay to reclaim it? And would the shadows let them escape once again? As the darkness huddled around them, Jenna realized this was only the beginning of a wretched confrontation, one she couldn't face alone. The infinite blackness felt alive, wrapping around Jenna and her friends like 1,000 cold tendrils reaching for their souls. Panic surged as the shape in the darkness twisted and writhed, an entity molded from their worst fears. But Jenna refused to let darkness claim them. She'd seen the glimmers of hope in her friends' eyes. "We need to focus. Remember who we are," she yelled, drawing strength from the memory of their laughter during happier times. "We've fought too hard to let this thing take us." Austin, still trembling, nodded fervently. "Together, right? We can do this together." Megan gripped Jenna's other hand tighter, her resolve spilling back. Together. Encouraged by each whisper of hope, Jenna found the courage to press forward. The circle of light pulsed nearby, flickering like a heartbeat, urging them onward. The shadows hissed, twisting closer, wanting them to break, to falter. But Jenna felt warmth radiate from their joined hands. "We can't give in to fear. We have to believe." As they moved forward, each step felt lighter, strengthened by their humanity, their collective spirit. But the figure loomed larger, its screeching voice rising, echoing with grotesque fury. "You cannot escape. You will be mine." Jenna felt the oppressive weight of despair rise against her. It felt like wearing lead shoes that threatened to drag her under. But even as the darkness pulled, her heart roared with defiance. Each step toward the light shredded the veil of fear, forcing the shadows back. "Don't look back. Keep pushing," she urged, her voice steady even amid the chaos. With one final push, they launched themselves toward the flickering glow, hand in hand, hearts beating in unison against the dissonance of dark laughter that crashed around them. They reached the edge of the circle and surged through, the light wrapping around them like a shimmering blanket, a protective embrace against the shadows. The darkness shrieked in rage, sizzling as it met the radiance. Their surroundings spun, colors bleeding into one another before they landed hard on cool grass, the familiar chill of the brisk night air enveloping them. Disoriented but safe, Jenna lifted her head, her heart racing. "Are we alive?" she whispered, breathless. Kyle pushed himself up beside her, shaking his head as if awakening from a nightmare. "We're out. We made it." Megan's voice broke out in a relieved laugh while tears streamed down her cheeks. "We did it. We actually did it." And yet, as they huddled together under the stars, the shadows stepped back, lurking just beyond the trees, angry mist swirling like a bad memory. Jenna turned to her friends, recognizing the moment was bigger than just survival. It solidified their bond, friends caught between laughter and darkness but now standing united. "No matter what, we'll face it together. We'll never let the darkness win again." With a chorus of agreement, their hearts swelled in unison, knowing they could conquer any fear, any shadow. Sizable sacrifices had been made in the battle against despair, but in this final moment, bathed in the soft aftermath of their fight, they would cherish one another. But beneath the calm surface, the deeper fear loomed, a reminder to never forget that darkness resides everywhere, waiting to ensnare the unwary. As dawn broke, the pale light spilling over Millstone, the friends shared a silent vow: never again would they turn against each other, never again would they let fear carve gaps between them. They turned to face the world, hand in hand, embracing the light of a new day. Yet a chilling whisper circled back on the wind, a reminder of what lay beyond the edges of safety. "Will you remember?" They froze, a shared glance filled with unspoken knowledge. The darkness never truly left. But together, they could stand against it. "Always," Jenna said softly, their hands tightening around each other once more, ready to face whatever came next, together. And as they walked toward the light of the sunrise, their laughter echoed through Millstone, forever resolute against the ghosts of the past. Now, if you want to keep following Jenna and the crew on their next adventures in light, or in darkness, you need to subscribe to the channel immediately so you don't miss out on more heart-pounding stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support for this epic journey. Flood the comments below with your reactions and theories about what's next for Jenna and her friends. And don't wait even one more second to share this thrilling conclusion with at least 5 friends who need to see it. Only true fans know the importance of supporting our fallen heroes in the battle against darkness.